The following videos are going to be examples of using freedom as a secondary reinforcer. People often ask if we ever use non-food reinforcers with snakes, and I do. Freedom is one of the huge non-food reinforcers that I use with snakes. This is 005, who has been offered an opportunity to exit his normal habitat and climb on this activity stand. There are no food reinforcers involved with this activity. The stand was pushed in front of his enclosure, and that signals that he has an opportunity to exit his enclosure if he chooses. The reinforcer for this activity is freedom itself. So he isn't going to be given any type of food reinforcer. He isn't going to be given any other reinforcer besides the act of having the freedom to explore the activity stand and move around on his own and come and go in and out of his enclosure as he pleases. And so this is a secondary reinforcer. Initially, when I started shifting 005 out of his enclosure when he was a baby, food was used as a primary reinforcer. But he quickly discovered that other things were reinforcing once he was out of his enclosure besides just the food. So he learned that not only did he sometimes get fed when he was out of his enclosure, but he also got to explore, roam around, stretch out, exercise, and have that mental and physical stimulation. He doesn't always get food when he comes out of his enclosure. He does not always get food when he's on this activity station. Sometimes he is just allowed out or given the opportunity to come out if he chooses, for the sole reason of having freedom to exercise out of his habitat. And this has become a secondary reinforcer for him. This snake is a 1-year-old Morelia Bredli named Spock, and he has only recently started asking to come out of his enclosure on his own. So when he comes to the door and asks to come out, I use it as an opportunity to do some choice-based handling with him. So in other words, when he comes to the door and indicates that he wants out, and I allow him to come out, he's learning to realize that he is being reinforced by freedom to explore, but he also has to allow some limited handling when he's out. If you notice his body language here, it is staying relaxed and comfortable and completely in the green zone. He hasn't sped up, he hasn't darted. His neck position, his head position, the speed of his tongue flick, nothing changed. So he is completely comfortable with me picking him up and carrying him over to this activity tree or this exercise tree. So what's happening here is we are teaching him that freedom can be reinforcing, that he has the choice and control to sometimes make the decision to come out of his enclosure or not, but that may entail some limited handling by me or another person. So we're combining this secondary reinforcer of freedom with some choice-based handling. So no food is being used in this exercise at all. We aren't giving him food as a reward for being handled. We're giving him his freedom to explore as a reward for being handled. This is Ronan. He is a 2-year-old Morelia Bredli. He is the snake that lives on my desk. He comes out almost every single night. This is him incessantly asking to come out. He's indicating to me that he wants out of his enclosure. And as you see here, I opened the door and he didn't realize it at first. And so I wanted to teach him a signal that I could show him to indicate to him that the door was open. And I have some video footage of something I decided on and that I've been using since this time to signal him that he has an opportunity to come out of his enclosure if he wants, and that the door is open and where it's available for him to exit through. This is actually a great example of Ronan asking me to let him out. I'm sitting at the desk working, and this is the behavior that I see that he exhibits when I know he wants out. And this is just an example of how he asks me to let him out. This behavior in the past has resulted in me opening the door, and it's reinforcing for him to be able to come out. And so he repeats this behavior now when he does indeed want out. In other words, he's trained me to let him out when he asks. I can't always do that 100% of the time. And there are times when I give him an opportunity to come out when he isn't necessarily asking. And I believe I have some video footage of how I do that. I will look for and see if I can add it to this footage. And then he has a routine. He has a route that he likes to travel when he gets out. Sometimes he goes in and out of his enclosure for a couple of minutes and he gets a drink before he starts his journey. And sometimes he investigates what I'm doing here on the desk, but then he always goes to the left. He climbs under or over the open door, over these other enclosures, and over to this activity stand. He does climb over to that Exoterra, which is a 36 by 36 Exoterra. And he gets in those horse stuffed animals, and then he turns around so his tail's hidden in those stuffed animals, but his body is right here on the activity station. And then he'll sit there all night long, like literally hours, like 8, 10, 12 hours before I put him away for the evening when I'm ready to go to bed. And that is sometimes 3, 4, 5 in the morning. And the time now is 18:28. This purple lollipop target is what I chose to use as a signal to Ronan that he has an opportunity to exit his enclosure and come out if he chooses. I then set the target down at the location where he is able to exit from his enclosure. This target has never been paired with food, and I will never pair it with food. This target is paired with the reinforcer of freedom, and it signals him that he has an opportunity to come out. As you see here, I moved the target to the other end of the door, and he's moving to that location because he's learned that where he sees the target is where he's able to exit through. Ronan has a completely different target that I use for target training with food as a reinforcer. And so his other target is a blue circle disc, and it signals him that he has the opportunity to earn a food reinforcer for relocating, for following the target, for touching the target, for whatever it is I'm asking him to do. This target is telling him that he has the opportunity to earn freedom as a reinforcer when he sees it. This gray banded king snake, who is named Cessna, is shifting from her primary living space into an exercise or activity tent. She is not getting reinforced with food. This particular snake eats inside of her enclosure. She is puzzle fed inside her enclosure. She is not being given food as a reinforcement for shifting into the tent. She does that because she finds freedom and the available activity reinforcing in itself. So when she is presented with that tent adjacent to her enclosure, she voluntarily shifts into it. Rodney, our bull snake, voluntarily shifts onto this activity station when she is presented with it adjacent to her enclosure. Now remember, these snakes have the choice and control as to whether or not to participate in this activity, and the only reinforcer they're getting is freedom. In these cases, they were not given food reinforcement.